When they turn down the music, that's the cue that you have to get to the podium. Good evening, everybody. Buenas noches. Thank you for joining us. Bienvenidos. I know this is going to sound a little bit like a crazy ask, but if there's some chairs open at the front, don't be afraid to move forward. I know it's nice to sit back and check out your phone, but I promise you this is going to be a really fun and hopefully informative conversation. So by a show of hands here tonight, who here is a freshman? Oh, that's a lot of hands. Sophomores? Okay, a few sophomores. So I want to congratulate you for being proactive and being here tonight, because you are going to get a chance to learn more about probably, I think, one of the most special and unique programs that the Cronkite School offers. And you all are getting dibs on that early on, so kudos to you. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a seat. We're going to be talking to a stellar panel tonight of professional journalists who lead the bilingual professional programs and reporting classes here at the Cronkite School. And so let's get started. So first of all, I should introduce myself, because you may be wondering, who the heck is this woman? So my name is Vanessa Ruiz, and I'm actually the director for the Borderlands Bureau at Cronkite News. We are the news division of Arizona PBS. I also work for Arizona PBS. Sometimes when Valeria lets me, I help with the broadcast for Noticias, and I do a lot of community work in terms of the value and importance of diversity and inclusion. So with all of that being said, more importantly, like I said, we have an incredible panel tonight, so I want to introduce them. So I'll start at the end there. Fernanda Santos. She is a Southwest Borderlands Initiative professor of practice, teaching short-form and long-form narrative journalism. She joined the Cronkite School after 12 years at the New York Times, where she served as Phoenix bureau chief for 5 of those years. Her book, The Fire Line, the story of the Granite Mountain Hotshots, won the Western Writers of America 2017 Spur Award for Best First Nonfiction Book. She, for example, has fellowships in the Casey Children and Family Fellowships, and also a board member at the Arizona Latino Media Association. Valeria Fernández in the middle there, she's been reporting on Arizona's immigrant community and the immigration debate now for more than 10 years. She was named Latina Journalist of the Year in 2004 by the National Association of Hispanic Publications. She has co-directed and produced several documentaries, and she's also been a freelance journalist for a number of print, digital, and broadcast media outlets. Some of them you may have heard of. For example, CNN en Español, CNN International, Radio Bilingual, PRI's The World, La Opinión, and also the Associated Press, and she's a fellow for the International Center for Journalists. And right here to my left, we have Julio Cisneros. He is one of the 2 Robert Wood Johnson Foundation Professors of Practice in Health News, and he works with a team of students in Cronkite News who cover health issues all along the Southwest, with a particular focus on Latino and Native American communities. Cisneros is an Emmy Award-winning journalist with 23 years of experience as a reporter, news director, and also editor at Spanish-language television, radio, and digital outlets, including Telemundo and Univision. So please, let's give the panel a big round of applause tonight. So, Valeria, I'd like to start with you first, and Fernanda and Julio, feel free to jump in. I'd like to hear from you, because you're what we call, you're a line of first defense. You're in the front lines when it comes to teaching these programs and these important classes, and the bilingual professional program. Can you speak to us in terms of what that process is like for you and what each of your individual classes and programs entail?
¿This is on? Okay. Muy buenas tardes. Gracias a todos por acompañarnos. Where to begin? Well, I think I'm very fortunate because I work in the 6th floor in a newsroom, and this is like one of the places where all of you really get to work hands-on on all of these things that you're learning in class. You start to get to put them into practice. And about 2 years ago, the school expanded that program, so now we get to do journalism in Spanish too. And the work that the students produce in the newsroom, it's published in a digital platform, it's picked up by different newspapers across the state, and pretty soon around the country. And we also have a newscast in Spanish that airs, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks in Univision Arizona, which, as you know, is one of the largest TV stations here for the Spanish audience in the state. So basically what I get to do every day, every other day, is just work with you guys, with you all, on your stories. And you go into the community, you get deep into the reporting, we workshop that, sometimes we make mistakes, we get better, and we publish that, and we're serving actually an audience. It's not just an assignment for a class, but it goes out there into the world. It gets it into the community, and in some occasions, you're breaking the story. You are the journalist that is bringing the information before anybody else in the state, which is, I think, pretty exciting. So I'm gonna leave it like that, because...
Thank you. So with that being said, let's show a quick snippet of the latest Noticias newscast that Valeria was just mentioning, and that airs on Univision Arizona.
Desde sus estudios en el centro de Phoenix, bienvenidos a Cronkite Noticias.
Un grupo de comerciantes aseguran que la llegada del tren ligero dañará sus bolsillos.
A 2 años del huracán María que arrasó Puerto Rico, 3 jóvenes y sus familias hablan sobre sus experiencias.
Cronkite Noticias empieza ahora.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Les saluda Karina Espinosa.
Y yo soy Claudia Faust. Bienvenidos a Cronkite Noticias.
El huracán Dorian no ha sido el único que ha dejado una marca permanente en muchas vidas. Esta semana se cumplen 2 años de los estragos que dejó el huracán María en Puerto Rico.
María no solamente provocó fuertes inundaciones, pero también dejó a miles de familias sin un hogar, destruyendo carreteras y puentes, y dejó a toda la isla sin energía eléctrica.
Excellent. So if you notice there, that's Carina Espinosa and Claudia Faust. Claudia, her family's from Venezuela, but I wouldn't say that Spanish necessarily is her first language, but yet there she is. And how many of you have ever seen Cronkite Noticias before? Was that the first time that you ever saw that newscast? So just know that that is one of the great, amazing opportunities that students have if they decide they want to go down the bilingual reporting track, is to be able to graduate from this school and already have that professional portfolio, those bilingual clips, which of course are tremendously helpful when it comes time to look for a job. So Claudia, as I was mentioning, Spanish not necessarily her first language, but that's one of the beauties, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that in just a bit, about this program, that you don't necessarily have to be a native Spanish speaker to be a part of a bilingual program. Fernanda, can you please talk a little bit about how you started weaving your ability to be, you're multilingual, right? You speak English, Spanish, and Portuguese. Am I missing any others? French. And French. Can you talk a little bit about how you started to weave your ability to be multilingual in your professional career and how that has helped you along the way?
So hi everybody. I see Alyssa, maybe others, too many lights, Miranda. I'm originally from Brazil, so Portuguese is my native language. Spanish is my 3rd language, yet when I decided, I came to this country to go to graduate school. I went to Boston University a long time ago, and when I decided to stay, the big asset, the big competitive advantage that I had was the fact that I spoke Spanish. And of course, Portuguese, they like the fact that, a reporter speaks 4 languages, but really the language that was most important was Spanish. And here at Cronkite, I teach a course called Advanced Bilingual Reporting. I work very closely with Valeria. Since we started with this course 2 years ago, she and I sit down at the start of the semester and I say, this is what this specific semester is going to be focused on. Then we work out a plan of having my students participate in Avance, which is the Facebook live newscast that they have every week, right, Valeria? Every Thursday. So my students introduced the project there. We have stories published in Noticias. This year we're actually publishing in Noticias and Cronkite News. So the students are actually doing the work in both languages, English and Spanish. And the most interesting part is that just like me, the students in my class this semester, none of them are native Spanish speakers. In fact, none of them are of Hispanic or Latino descent. They're all, Anglo-Americans. Miranda, who is here, is Anglo-American. She was in my advanced bilingual reporting class and did amazing work. So I say that because the fact that Spanish may be, the language that you talk to your grandmother with, or that you learn in high school, should not be seen as an impediment. What we can offer you is an opportunity to practice that language in a professional setting with the mentorship of people who do this for a living. And so that when it's time for you to go look for your job, you can say, not only did I publish all these stories in English, but also I did all this work in Spanish. Like I said, it was what got me the jobs that I've gotten in journalism in this country. And I can assure you that the more you have to offer in another language in the United States these days, the better.
So to that point, who better than recent Cronkite alums to talk about their experience now working out in the field as MMJs, as digital reporters, and being able to implement those bilingual skills that they were able to get here at the Cronkite School. So let's listen to what they have to say.
Hola, yo soy Jessica Chavarría, reportera y productora para Univisión Arizona.
Hola, soy Talía Varelas, reportera para Noticias Univisión Nueva Inglaterra.
¿Qué tal, amigos de Cronkite Noticias? Con ustedes Felipe Corral Jr. aquí desde los estudios de los Arizona Cardinals.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Mi nombre es Charly Santiago con Telemundo Atlanta.
Soy Roberto Ruiz, reportero de Noticias Univisión 21 desde Bakersfield, California.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Les saluda Jackie López, reportera para Telemundo 3 en Yuma.
Hola, yo soy Ricardo Ávila, trabajo en Telemundo Arizona.
Ser periodista bilingüe creo que es una gran ventaja, especialmente en estos momentos.
And what's the benefit of being bilingual in my industry? Simplemente que me puedo comunicar en dos idiomas. My network has increased, and what I can do in English lo puedo hacer igual de bien en español.
La diferencia que hago como periodista bilingüe es que puedo ser el vínculo entre la información y la comunidad.
Al darle la voz a aquellos que no siempre la tienen.
Significa ayudar a mi comunidad a mantenerse informada de los acontecimientos que suceden día a día.
Hay muchos inmigrantes de primera generación o inmigrantes que están recién llegando y todavía tienen la barrera del idioma, y uno como persona bilingüe y como periodista tiene la capacidad, tiene el poder de traducir.
We need to be the beacons of hope for our communities.
Tras brindar esa información, puedo mostrarles otra perspectiva.
Tenemos el compromiso de contar las historias que desafortunadamente para otros medios de comunicación no son prioridad, pero son extremadamente importantes para nuestra comunidad.
So that literally could be any one of you in just a few years, because I don't think any of those, maybe one or two, but they're all within the last year, 2, 3 years of graduating Cronkite. So it's not like they've been out there for a long time. You could be doing this in just a matter of a few years. Julio, who's actually our newest member of the family, just joining us in July over the summer, I call Julio Mr. Know Everybody, because Julio knows everybody and everybody knows Julio. Can you talk to us a little bit about the ability to connect with different kinds of people when you're out there reporting stories and you're able to communicate with sources and contacts and just people that you need for your stories in different languages, and the difference that that can make?
Yes, of course. Buenas noches a todos. Good evening, everyone. For me, let me tell you that Arizona has been an adventure for me. Since I came here, I started talking to every single people that I encounter. For example, if I'm driving and I stop and I see a landscaper, I start talking to this landscaper, exchange telephone numbers. When I go to restaurants, I talk to the waiter, exchange telephone numbers, doctors, psychologists, Every single person. You know why? It's because that's very important to connect with the community. That's the way I learned to tell unique stories, connecting and engaging with the community, because sometimes news, most of the news, the really important and engaging news comes from the community. So that's why I think it's very important to be involved with the community, and not just to be involved, but to be in contact with them constantly. And for me, this is a great opportunity, especially working for this health initiative, because we are reaching underserved communities. One of them is the Hispanic community, the other is Native American community. Just to give you an idea, 7% of Hispanics in Arizona, they don't have a health insurance. That's according to data from 2015. Also, another important data that I found is that diabetes is killing a lot of people, especially Hispanic. 2005, 46.0% of deaths were caused by diabetes. And if we're talking about the Native American, is 69.9. Those are high numbers. So that's our goal, to reach those communities and give them information that can change their lives.
And being able to speak to them in their language, of course, makes a huge difference, right?
Yeah, definitely, because in this world, a lot of people speak Spanish and English at the same time. At least in my case, I feel very connected with the Hispanic community. So we speak Spanish, and some we speak English. And so in this world, I think it's very important to be bilingual.
And one thing that I wanted to add is that you might be working for an English language publication. I've always worked for English language publications. But the ability to interview people in Spanish allows you to enter these worlds in a way that English-speaking reporters will not be able to, allow you to hear stories that the English-only speaking reporters would not be able to, and allow you to bring a fresh perspective. Julio talked about, finding these unique stories. Sometimes it's because you're reporting specifically on the Latino community for a Spanish language medium, right? But you could also bring in just a fresh perspective because you were able to penetrate a world and then open the doors of their world to an English-speaking audience. So it goes both ways, but it requires practice. I mean, you could speak the language and go out there and start interviewing, but having the opportunity to, hone those skills here, really get to write, get to interview, get to edit video, get to translate even, becomes, it will make your life a lot easier, and it will make you a better bilingual journalist once you're on, professionally on the field.
And I'll add too, it's also an opportunity to get past the initial shyness. If you're not that fluent in Spanish, you get to try. And you learn about culture and different communities. And that really transfers as a journalist across the board to working with all kinds of communities, Native American communities, refugee communities in other languages. And sometimes you will find yourself having to work with an interpreter. But it's like flexing the muscle of working with people that are different than you and building trust and building relationships, which is something that Julio does very well. And it's like, so fundamental to basically what journalism is all about, which is being very close to your community. It's almost, I guess sometimes we forget that we are here to serve the audience, not just to satisfy them with what they want to hear, but we are here to serve them.
Yeah, and something that I want to add is that I'm still surprised that a few months ago I learned that a Navajo community, they've been living without electricity all their life. It's completely unbelievable, living in 21st century, people with no electricity. Just imagine yourself living in those conditions with this heat. That really broke my heart, and those are the communities we're trying to reach.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I always say is we have the privilege of giving a voice to those who perhaps don't have a voice, right? A voice to the voiceless. That's one of the biggest responsibilities that we have as journalists. But I see some faces in the audience that look a little unnerved. And maybe it's because you're sitting there thinking, but I don't know Spanish. What does this have to do with me? And I just want to reiterate that that is the beauty of being in this school, that you have access to the kind of programs and classes that will get you to where you need to be in terms of being able to work as a bilingual journalist. Right now, we're offering English and Spanish, but who knows, maybe in a few years, we'll expand that to other languages as well. That would be
Portuguese would be
that
great.
would be an amazing, amazing thing, and I can certainly see that happening in the future. But I just don't want anybody to feel deterred or dejected by the fact that maybe they don't feel comfortable in their skill set, because we work with students every semester that come in with all different kinds of skill set levels. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and one of the things too is that, it works for whether you're interested in broadcast, you're a video person, you're a digital person, you like to write. I have a student this semester, Chloe Jones, who is in the investigative journalism master's program, and she's very good and very interested in interactive graphics, finding interactive ways to tell stories. And we're working on citizenship, and she came up with this super creative graphics. So she's not necessarily writing anything or doing broadcasts, but she's using all the skills that she learned here, applying that to think of a story that's going to serve a Spanish-speaking audience. How do I present this to an immigrant audience in a way that makes it relevant? Because it's not just a language, right? It's being exposed to that different world, to having that cultural sensitivity. It applies to anything. Valeria mentioned refugees. Julio mentioned indigenous communities. Once you have that first experience, everything that comes after it becomes easier, and that is only going to make you a better journalist.
Right, and I was also thinking about the team that helps produce Cronkite Noticias and the control room behind the scenes. Right. Not everybody is fluent in Spanish, but they're like producing a Spanish newscast. So there's also a role to be played there. We have people in our team that are producers, so you could also work in producing on Spanish. We have had people that wanted to do radio in Spanish, so we tapped into that. So one of the beauties, I think, about the entire program and all the classes that we teach is that we're really open to let you experiment. And this word we hear all the time in the university, innovation. And that innovation comes from you, not from us. So if you want to do narrative video, okay, let's do it. We're thinking about doing a bilingual Facebook Live. So we've got to figure out how we'll go about it. But that's the fun of being here in the university. You get to try stuff.
Let's talk jobs. I know that for some of you freshmen and sophomores, that may seem like a million years away, but I'm pretty sure you'd like to have a job once you graduate, right? That's sort of one of the big goals. So with that in mind, I look at certain companies, for example, Telemundo NBC, that's one of the first ones that comes to mind, that are actively searching for journalists who can speak in both languages. I know that many others are doing the same thing because they recognize the value, right, of someone who's able to communicate in multiple languages. Can you speak to that in terms of the importance of having that bilingual skill set when you walk out of a place like Cronkite? I know that some of the folks on the panel believe that maybe you should get paid more. You should get paid twice as much, right?
Yeah, from my experience, Vanessa, I can tell you that now journalists, bilingual journalists, they have a lot of opportunity. There is more opportunity for them to work in media, not necessarily just in English or Spanish, or could be both. One example you said is Telemundo. You don't have to be in front of a camera if you don't speak the language. You can be behind the camera. Everything is produced in English. The language is in English. With, of course, Telemundo is the same as NBC. So you have to be prepared for that world. For example, when I was working for Telemundo here in Arizona, all of us, we were prepared and dressed like we were national correspondents in case a news is breaking right in the moment, and since you become from local reporter to a national correspondent, you have to be ready to report in English, but also in Spanish. So I think that's a great opportunity, and that's what the school is offering too. We're preparing people to be good in both languages, and I understand in also both cultures. And you don't have to be Hispanic to work in Spanish media. That's not, as long as you understand the language and the culture, you have a great opportunity.
I want to add something about my personal experience, because obviously you hear that I have an accent like many of us in the panel. And I started my career in a small newspaper in Spanish. And the way that speaking English actually in Spanish opened doors for me it's been incredible, because at one point, about 10 years ago, I became a freelancer. And because I was able to move in between those two worlds, the type of clients that I got was extremely broad. I was 1 minute doing a package for CNN in Spanish, another I was writing a breaking news for AP, but sometimes they needed somebody to go on camera and do something in English. I was able to do that. Then they were calling me from NPR, hey, something's going at the state legislature in Arizona, can you give us a report? So I struggled at first with my use of English and my accent and my grammar, but little by little I got better. And I cannot even tell you the scope of opportunities that I've gotten from speaking these two languages, but also for having a strong foundation in journalism, which is what you're going to get, right? Because the bottom line is you have to have a strong foundation in journalism, and then you can go in all of the mediums that you want.
Right. Yeah, I just want to add a quick thing too. First of all, if you don't know Valeria Fernandez's work, you should check it out, because I'm not saying this because she's my friend, but she is one of the best fully bilingual journalists in this country. She does radio, TV, and print in both languages, and that's really, and really, really well in both languages, which is rare. So I suggest that if you're interested in bilingual reporting and see even similar stories, how can they can be covered differently for English media, English-speaking media and Spanish-speaking media. What I wanted to add has a little bit to do with the pay. So, this is a skill, I call it competitive advantage. My daughter is fluent in Portuguese. That's my native language. So I speak to her in Portuguese all the time. She's completely fluent. Of course, I have an interest in that. Salud. Because my whole family is in Brazil and I want her to speak my language, and I want to preserve that in her. But I tell her that just the fact that she is fluent in another language, when she goes looking for a job, will offer something that many other job applicants don't have. So whatever language it might be that you have in your heritage at home, or anything you learned in school that you might be interested in furthering that knowledge here, consider that these years in college is an opportunity to do that. And look at that, as I said, as a competitive advantage. And what that means is that not only will it set you apart from lots of other job applicants, but also, and that's the hardest part, because when we're starting out, we just want a job, but also, I urge you to keep in mind that it's a valued and valuable skill. So people are going to try to make you do the work of two, with a pay of one, right? Because that's essentially your ability, and it's a curse and a blessing. So keep that in mind, because every time you are in a position to negotiate a salary, every time somebody asks you, at a job interview, what it is that you think you should make sure to stress the fact that you have done work. If you take our classes and join the program, that you have done work in Spanish language and English language, that you are able to interview, to read, to write, to understand culturally people from other parts of the world or other communities within this country, and use that as a way of maybe getting a little more for yourself, because it costs money to hire someone who speaks that language, to hire, and you're not a translator. Your job should not be to translate. If somebody wants you to translate, you say, how about we report, we share the byline, and we do the story together. So, I know a lot of you are just starting out, but it's never too early to start thinking about that, because if you learn about this now from us in college, and you have the opportunity to talk to us, and always feel free, because we're always available and happy to talk, hopefully we will be able to better prepare you for that moment when you're graduating and you're so eager to get a job, so that you don't make the mistake that I made. I took a job, my first job in this country, for $28,000, and I could barely eat because it just wasn't enough money, and that was in 1999. So, it was a struggle, but I didn't realize until years later that I had something that was worth a lot of money, and I smarted out in time. I still struggle, but a little less.
I'm laughing because mine was for 24,000 in 2003.
Oh, you beat me.
And I think just one important thing to remember is that don't be afraid if you have an accent, if you say a word that doesn't, sometimes we all make mistakes, and making mistakes is the only way to learn.
Right.
So don't be afraid to make mistakes.
My students can attest to the fact that sometimes they say, how do you pronounce that? And that's in English. And I say, I know how to spell it, but I don't know how to pronounce it. And it's okay. If you have an accent, I think that ultimately people care. Are you a good storyteller? Are you connecting with the people you're interviewing? Are you getting the good stories out? The grammar, the accents, all those things are either forgotten, not considered, or corrected.
Yeah, and I want to reiterate what Fernanda said. Our doors are open for Cronkite News, Cronkite Noticias. We are in the 6th floor in the newsroom. I am there on Tuesdays. Well, you tell Tuesdays and Thursdays. And you can stop by and come and see how we tape the Facebook Live every Thursday, and also Cronkite Noticias, the newscast. The other day we had somebody visit, and he ended up volunteering to work with a camera. So you never know what might happen. And we really like to engage you early on. And sometimes I allow you to pitch a story as a sort of an experiment and work on it. And then sometimes we post it on the website, or we put it on the broadcast.
Yeah, I'm in 365 in the faculty suites. I'm here, I'm teaching in Tempe this semester, but I'm here Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can reach me by email. I teach, like I said, advanced bilingual reporting. It's not in the newsroom, but my students eventually do work upstairs. So if you don't necessarily want to, if you want to try it out first, maybe take my class, then apply the following semester for Noticias. Some of my students, Miranda is an example, right? Did my class and now is working at Cronkite Noticias. Charlene Santiago was the other way around. She worked for Noticias first, and then she took my class. I have a student who's a sophomore, Farah El Tohami, who last semester as a freshman came to me to ask about this class, and now she's taking the class. But she took about 45 minutes, and we had a great conversation. And she's of Egyptian descent, but she happens to speak Spanish too.
Yeah, the sky's really the limit.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good opportunity to show all of you in the audience one of your fellow classmates, your fellow students who is in Cronkite News, but she collaborates with Noticias. And so we're going to show you a quick clip of a story that she did recently in English, but then she also did the Spanish version. So then she had the story run first on Cronkite News, and then she was able to present her story on Cronkite Noticias. So she got double billing, one on Arizona PBS first, and then second on Univision Arizona. Her name is Marcela Baero.
Cronkite News has a mission to cover stories in every corner of the state. It's part of our Access Across Arizona initiative.
And tonight, a story of song and some very dedicated teachers in Cochise County. Reporter Adriana De Alba traveled to the border town of Naco, Arizona to see how some musicians are inspiring children in the sister city of Naco, Sonora.
Actually, this is Adriana De Alba.
It's a project that's breaking barriers along the border, and its message is loud and clear. Children and adults from...
So that is, no, that's okay, we can roll it.
She also did a version in Spanish of this one.
Yes, and they have both versions. So that was part of the English version.
Gracias, Nicole. Ahora pasamos con Adriana De Alba, quien nos explica cómo un proyecto está superando barreras a lo largo de la frontera.
Así es, se trata de un grupo de músicos arizonenses que viajan a la ciudad fronteriza de Naco, Sonora, para inspirar a niños mexicanos y enviar el mensaje de que tanto niños como adultos de ambos países pueden crear armonía, no solamente musical.
Wonderful, thank you. How cool is that? How cool is that? Adriana De Alba, I stand corrected because I sent a couple of clips. She recently graduated and is working out on the East Coast now, doing phenomenally well. And I know that one of the reasons why they were so interested in hiring her when she was getting ready to graduate is because she had these bilingual clips in her professional portfolio. So again, don't underestimate the importance of having that, and not just for news, for sports, for social media, for marketing, for public relations. Being multilingual is an asset. Which leads me to my next question to the panel. We're living in a time right now where sometimes if you are speaking another language that is not English in public, you might get a look, someone might say something. I myself have been told, speak American, whatever that means. How do you feel about that? And how do you respond in terms of students who may be feeling a little hesitant to maybe work in another language or try another language, sort of taking into consideration what we're seeing today here?
Okay, I am going to withhold some strong words I was going to say, because this is being taped. You know, my first day covering the state legislature back in 2003, the Speaker of the House was supporting a bill, and I approached him, you know, outside in like the, what do you call it, the Rose Garden. It's a great place to get interviews. You know, you catch them when they're going to lunch. So I walked over and I said, oh, I write for La Voz newspaper, and I want to ask a comment about this bill that you're supporting. You go back to Mexico. Your newspaper, you guys did an opinion piece about me that was negative. And I was like paralyzed. I must have been like 24 years old at that time, and that was the very first time that I was encountered with that kind of language. I've never had an experience like that. And I am from Uruguay, so I could not go back to Mexico anyways. I had been interviewing people out in the field in English, and somebody heard me use a word that they didn't like, and they lashed at me, and they asked me about my citizenship. So about a year ago, I had a student covering a story at the state legislature that was about dreamers that were protesting against some bill or something. And they were counter-protesters, and my student was afraid to interview them because he said, I look too much like the dreamers, and I was afraid they were going to attack me. And that's hard. That's really, really hard. You have to, you know, safety first. That's important. There are some people out there that could get aggressive. I'm not going to lie about it. But you also, it's important for you to remain professional and to remember that you're there to report the news. And you really, even if something hurts you, you're not there to debate the opinions of people. You're there to convey them, and also to convey them in the most fair way that you can. You're not gonna pick the person that's making the silliest argument to make them look bad, right? You're gonna find the most articulate person on whatever side of a debate and present that. But one thing that I tell my students is, who you are makes you a better reporter. No matter what color you are, what background you have, what accent you have, your personal experience brings strength to your reporting. It makes you ask better questions. And it could be not just, you know, in my case, I'm from Uruguay, I'm a Latina, at one point I didn't have papers, fine. But it could be that maybe you have a family member that had Alzheimer's, and that informs your reporting. It could be that maybe you had a family member that is in the military, And that not necessarily makes you biased. It just gives you an insight and a perspective that other people might not have. So that's what I would say.
And I want to also add that you should always also remember, and I tell my students that, for those of you who may have not had a lot of experience interacting with people who are different than who you are, you may have grown up in a very Latino community or a very white community, white as in like Anglo community, because there are white people who are Latinos, right? If you are learning from people like us, right, it will open your mind so that when you are faced with others criticizing an immigrant, someone with an accent, a woman, you will be like, you will remember that you in college learned from people like that and hopefully enjoyed your experience. And therefore, you are going to be one of those people going to be like, no, what are you talking about? Maybe you one day will be an editor. Maybe one day you're going to be in a position that you're going to be hiring people. So what a great life experience it is to be taught by people who are quote unquote different, who are not who you are, and take that with you to your professional life and your life in general. And then begin using that as a way of to counterbalance some of the experiences that Valeria described. I don't mince words, so I'm not going to talk much about that because I need my job. But here's what I'm going to say. If somebody criticizes you for speaking English, for speaking Spanish, guess what? You also speak English, right? Everybody here is understanding very clearly what I'm saying. So it's like, wait a minute, why are you criticizing me for speaking Spanish? I speak one more language than you do, at the very least. So who's the loser here? That's always what I say. Like, what are you talking about? I speak English. Maybe my English is funny sometimes, but guess what? I can speak, I can read, I can talk. In fact, I teach writing in English. So don't go there, unless you can compete. But
and I want to share just an experience also when I was working at Telemundo. Many times, not only once, when I was getting ready to go live, in front of a camera live, some people stopped their car and they told me, this is America, speak English, go back to Mexico. But fortunately, I was prepared for that. So my advice for you is that you have to remain professional. You only have control of what you do yourself. You don't have control what other people do. So control yourself. Don't feel offended. It's just be professional. It doesn't matter what you face.
And one more thing. Don't take it personally. I know it's really, really hard because at one point in your profession, you're going to be faced with a situation that something is going to be hitting very close to home. And it could be, not necessarily about your status or your accent. It could be about your personal beliefs. Mm-hmm. Just don't take it personally, but also remember that you are a human too, and that things can hurt you. And if you need to talk to a mentor or another colleague about it, it's okay to do that. It's okay to, take care of your mental health, and also remember that some of the things that you will see, some of the reporting that you're going to do, is going to really stay there in your heart and in your mind sometimes. So, it's not like, you can sweep all of these things under the rag. I think that for us to share about this is also healing. To be able to express this in the open, and we get to talk about this together, and sometimes come up with strategies or better coping mechanisms for that.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to remember when you are out in the field reporting, it is not just yourself, you're representing a company. So whatever you do, whatever you say could affect not just you, but a company itself.
That's great advice. Thank you to the three of you for that. We have one final video that I'd like to show all of you, and it features Carina Espinosa. Carina, I think, is on her second semester of Cronkite Noticias.
And she was in my class too.
And she was in your class as well? she has an incredible story to tell, and she also represented Cronkite recently because if you don't know, ASU was giving the Seal of Excelencia as a university, one of the first 9 to receive this recognition. And basically what that means is that ASU is a Hispanic serving institution. So I'd like to go ahead and roll Karina's video.
It's been a dream come true just coming to college. Coming from like an immigrant family and being able to be the first one to go to college, that was a dream come true not only for me but for my parents too. Having me go to the university, it makes them feel like they don't have to worry about anything, you know, because they know that I'm gonna be fine. Knowing that there's a school out there that's gonna support me, that's gonna give me the tools to succeed in life. Just to see the newsroom every day, like when I go up there, it still feels like it's a dream come true, and like I want to give it my best every day here. The interaction here with the professors, it's very professional and very human. It's not ever like a time where they make you feel uncomfortable, like you're not worth it or that you're replaceable, you know? It's really amazing that ASU got awarded this. It kind of gives us, the Latino and our Hispanic community, like an inspiration, I guess, because they see that we're being recognized. It kind of makes us feel empowered and knowing that someone is looking at our work, you know, that somebody cares, especially in times like this.
Thank you for that. I don't think Karina would mind if I said that I have watched Karina grow tremendously as a journalist in this past few semesters working with Valeria and Fernanda. Karina is a perfect example of what a student can accomplish when they put their mind and effort into being a part of the professional, whether it's the professional reporting program or some of the bilingual in-depth reporting classes. Really, you make of it what you want. And I have full confidence that when she graduates, she'll have no problem getting a job. So to watch that growth has been tremendous. Can you talk a little bit about, before we open it up real quick to questions, what makes this program so unique and special?
I'll just use the example of Karina. She started out really shy, you know, very quiet. I knew that she was a daughter of Mexican immigrants, that she spoke Spanish at home, but, you know, it was almost like she was the least fluent in the class. Miranda was in the class. We had Mia Armstrong, who is now a Fulbright Fellow in Mexico. Kiana Wogan, who was not Hispanic, has some Hispanic in her, but a lot of different ethnicities. And Sunana Tandon, who was Indian. So it was a very, you know, multinational class. And Karina started very shy, insecure, and by the end of the semester, she was sure of who she was. She was interviewing Raquel Teran, one of the state representatives, and asking her tough questions. And I'm standing there thinking, this cannot be the same person. So just gaining that confidence. And then when she was already working with Noticias when she was in my class, and then she decided to do the second semester with Valeria and Cronkite Noticias. And I see her now, and she is a change. She is, like, you see the growth just being so significant for her. And she is just one example because she was just in the video, but you know, everybody that we see start, wherever they start, they're gonna end at a higher point.
I like what she said in the video, you know, that the relationship with the professors is very human and professional, that I'd like to know, or at least that's what we want you to know, that it's okay, you know, you can make mistakes. We're here to try things. We're here to experiment. And I remember Karina, she wasn't even enrolled in the class, but she did a package for a newscast. And I told her, do you want to present it? Just like we saw the other reporters. She never read from a prompter. And she did it, and she did it so well. We had, just last week, another student, Lydia Terrazas, who's not in the class, but I said, do you want to try do the Facebook Live? She did amazing. So, you know, don't hesitate to come to us and maybe visit one of Fernanda's classes, come and talk to Julio, talk to Vanessa, get your feet wet already, get to know the professors now. And, you know, there may be opportunities to start doing things. And that's what I love. I mean, you're not even enrolled in the class. You're not getting credit, but you're still interested. That's the kind of students that we're looking for, people that are passionate.
Okay, I see, unless you want to say something, Julio, but that microphone is too lonely.
Just one more thing I'd like to add. Before, okay. I want to tell you that the opportunity is there. For example, Telemundo Arizona is going to start publishing and airing some of our stories, either English or Spanish. They're going to be published in Telemundo Arizona. And also in my country, there's a newspaper that covers about more than 17 million people, and they're going to start publishing Cronkite Noticias and Cronkite News also, either English or Spanish. So there is an opportunity that you have to take advantage. And
what country is that, Julio?
Guatemala, my country.
There you go.
Yeah, and thank you. I've seen the Consul of Guatemala who is here. Mr. Padilla, thank you. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. También al vicepresidente de Noticias, Vice President of News, Mike Gaitán. He's here with us also. La señora Alma Mendoza, también de la comunidad.
This
Michelle
is why everybody
Arenas.
knows Julio. And Julio knows everybody. Do you see what's happening here? You're the best at that, by the way.
Thank you for being here. Gracias.
So with that, we'll open it up now to questions. Thank you. And just say your name and what year you're in, please.
Hello, my name is Lauren Quinlan. I'm currently a junior right now. Hi, Lauren. So I understand that this panel focuses on Spanish, but I just wanted to know if you guys personally think that if not now, but soon in the future, there will be a need for other languages to fit the different demographics and ethnicities that we do have in the United States, so that they too can feel more so of a connection with what's happening in the country, how to respond, and simply how to be a part of society that isn't simply just speaking English.
So if I may, I have been thinking about that, right? Because even if we think about Phoenix, which has so many refugees, immigrants from different parts of the world. So my class this semester, as I said, we're doing something on citizenship. And citizenship is not an issue that is exclusive of immigrants from Spanish-speaking immigrants, right? So I have a student who is doing, and that's the reason why we're doing our packages for Noticias and for Cronkite News. One student is doing a short documentary on a team of Somali soccer players. So they're being interviewed in English, but they talk amongst themselves in Arabic, and we're going in Somali. I'm sorry, and we're going to use voiceovers for the Spanish version and when necessary for the English version, so that people can hear that language who are from Somalia, and also understand what they're saying if they don't speak Somali. Another student is doing a story about North Africans and Middle Easterners who were going to be their own category in the census, but no longer. And she's doing some interviews in Arabic. So the effort for her is interviewing in Arabic, but then translate it into Spanish with voiceovers for Cronkite Noticias, and have a voiceover in English for Cronkite News. So while it's very difficult to have, to offer all these different languages, so we're trying to get the Spanish off the ground, and really not off the ground because it is off the ground, but to crystallize and root it here and expand it in the university. But there are always opportunities, and we are all aware of that, of using other languages in the reporting. So if you are someone who speaks a language other than Spanish, by all means, tell your professor if you're doing a depth reporting class, if you're in Cronkite News, Cronkite Noticias. I would like to be able to use my language skills. Sunena Tendon did a package in English, Spanish, and Hindi. And because she spoke all three languages. So we're open to all of that. We want to be as inclusive as we can.
Yeah, so just say it, and there's possibility to also publish in that language if we can find an editor, because obviously, if it's Portuguese, there you have her. But yeah, we can work on it. Be open to tell the professors. I mean, I work in the Spanish program, but I am open. Like I said, we did a story in Hindi because we knew it was a story that impacted a lot of people in that community. We struggled a little bit with the graphics to find the right graphics, but we made it happen. Yeah.
I think, and in terms of as an institution, I think in a perfect world down the road, of course, we would love to be able to offer more bilingual, multilingual professional programs that are not just in Spanish. I think right now we're focusing on this one, but stay tuned. You never know with Cronkite. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there. My name is Luis Zambrano. I'm a junior. So before anything else, I want to thank you because I'm a DACA recipient and I understand you brought up a lot of points that have actually happened to me. A few weeks ago, I had to write an article where there was many Spanish speakers, and I actually had an advantage over the other students who were covering the event because I was able to talk to people who only exclusively speak Spanish. And I've also been yelled at about speaking Spanish. That's neither here nor there. But
And yet your English is better than all of ours, so.
But I still have some difficulty speaking Spanish fluently. And how exactly does your class help with people who know the basics but still struggle with finding their voice or properly illustrating their points?
We work with you, and like Fernanda was saying, you know, you before taking my class, which you go out there to report, you could take Fernanda's class, start working. You will do bilingual, right, in English and Spanish.
Rick's, let's not forget Rick's class, which we haven't mentioned. Rick Rodriguez.
Oh, yes, yes. Also, that's an amazing class that you get to travel to other countries and do reporting there, and that class. Well, I can talk to you about that because there's some things changing right now, right? It's flowing. But in any case, I will invite you to come over, meet with Fernanda, come over and visit me Tuesdays, Thursdays. I'll show you. I have students with all different skill sets and levels. I don't know if you want to do digital or broadcast, or maybe, what do you want to do?
Writing, reporting.
Okay. That's what I love. Yeah, so we work with you, and I would recommend right now, start, you know, if you are in Twitter, start following, you know, Washington Post, LA Times in Spanish, La Opinión, Telemundo, Univision. Read. Make Spanish be your thing day after day, because subconsciously, you're gonna start getting more vocabulary. So that's really, really important. But you can get there. If I manage to write in English, you can write well in Spanish.
In fact, one of when the video was showing with Adriana De Alba, who did the package on the musicians in NACO, the reporter who introduced Adriana, Lillian Donahue, she has a strong English accent because she's a native English speaker, as pretty much you are, right? And they worked with her on pronunciation. They worked with her on, you know, the right way of saying the words, the cadence of the language, because the rhythm is different, right? And she was, you know, presenting the newscast in Spanish. So, you know, the sky's the limit. We're here to help.
That's right. And just one more thing, and we work one-on-one coaching you, and we teach international Spanish, because in Latin America there is different accent, different words, so we will teach you the proper Spanish, so every single country who speaks Spanish will be able to understand you, so international Spanish.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Fernanda Ruiz. I'm a freshman. Yes, Tocaya. Okay, I have a question. Was there a time during your journalism career where your law proficiency in English discouraged you from continuing your journalism path, that you thought that maybe this is not the right fit for me because I don't speak English properly, or because of my grammar or my accent or something? How were you able to overcome that situation?
I think if there was ever a time that we felt maybe this is not a profession for me because my English is not good enough, my grammar is limited, all the time, even as I am sitting here, I struggle with that. I struggle with, I often think my English is not good enough, and I'm afraid to send proposals of stories to top-notch editors, and I get nervous, and you know what I do? I rely on my colleagues and my mentors and my friends, and that's where I get my strength. I have been very, very lucky to have incredible friends and mentors. When I'm worried about something, I show it to them. Hey, what do you think? How can I improve? And I'm learning from them. And that's where I take my courage. So you have to find some people out there that are going to be rooting for you, and they're going to believe in you, and they're going to remind you that you can do it. And maybe you will find those people in us. I will be more than willing.
I also encourage you to not judge yourself based on, compare yourself to other people. Just all of you, whatever you're doing, you know, be the best that you can be. So instead of, if your Spanish or your English isn't good enough to write super complicated long sentences with all these pretty long words, then don't write them. Write the shorter sentences. You know, there's Faulkner, who can write an entire paragraph that's one page with no period, you know, one entire sentence that's one whole page of a book. And then there's Hemingway, who wrote the most beautiful sentences in very short, very simple English. So I always remember, you know, because I struggle with that when I write, I don't have to be like this person or that person. How can I make myself better every day? So if you start just focusing on improving you instead of comparing you to others, then it's, I think a little bit of the anxiety also goes away.
Yeah, and just one more thing. Fear is part of being humans. And I believe as humans, that's our only enemy. And as long as we overcome fear, you will be able to reach whatever you want in your life. So believe in yourself, and you will succeed.
Okay, gracias. Buenas noches.
De nada.
Okay.
I'd like to get through the last two questions. Is that cool? Yes? Okay, great. Come on. Sure.
Okay. Hola, gracias a todos por su tiempo. I'm Athena Ankra. I'm a freshman here. And okay, my question. You spoke a little bit about some experiences related to this earlier, but I just watched Jorge Ramos' TED Talk, which if you haven't seen it, it's really good. I would recommend it. But I wanted to know what your thoughts were on kind of what he talked about, staying neutral or otherwise on topics that affect the community in such an emotionally charged way. So in terms of immigration issues and those kinds of things that are so emotionally intense for the Latin, Hispanic, whatever you may have, community.
How do you stay unbiased? Is that the question? Or how do you?
Yes, so what are your thoughts on whether to stay unbiased in those situations or otherwise?
See, I don't believe in neutrality or objectivity. I believe in fairness. I think if you report with fairness, you are going to make an effort. If you make an effort to report fairly, you are going to include points of view, opinions that are different than yours, without necessarily pretending that you don't have any opinion. Because we all have opinions. It's impossible to ignore what we feel when we talk to people. Even sometimes it might be a topic that you disagree with, but you might meet a person who was struggling in such a way that you will feel for that person, even if you don't agree with what they are doing. You know, I remember interviewing a death row inmate once, and I cried with him because it was just a horrible, horrible place to be. And so doesn't mean that I wanted him free. He committed a horrible crime, but I also felt for him as a person. So I'm saying this because a lot of times people start in journalism thinking, I gotta be neutral. No, use your emotions, use your opinions to check yourself. If you believe in this so much, then what is it that people who don't believe in that feel like? How is it that they feel like? Sometimes be honest. You know, I don't understand what it's like to come from where you're coming from, or to have the opinions that you have. So tell me about that. Educate me. Help me understand. And if you're honest with the people you're talking to, and honest with yourself, then you don't fall into the trap of trying to be neutral, which then I think removes all emotion from your story, and that makes it really dull, and nobody really wants to engage with it. That's just me.
And I will say, though, one thing I tell my students is if you find yourself covering something where you recognize that you're maybe too emotionally invested or it's hitting too close to home, I think ethically, a good journalist at least has the wherewithal to say, you know what, maybe I'm not the best person to cover this story right now. And that's okay too. And I think that speaks more to the integrity of that reporter, to being able to make that statement and recognize that. But as Fernanda said, we all have biases. Every single one of us, we all have biases, whether you are aware of them or not. It's just a matter of how you're able to manage that.
And another thing I will say is that I have worked on a story for over a year that I care immensely about, and it was a story about a suicide. And I think it's okay to care. It's okay to care about minimizing the harm, which is, I think, one of the most important principles that we need to apply as journalists, that a story can have. It's okay to triple, quadruple check. And it's also okay to care in a way that you're transparent enough with people. Because they're like, well, what am I going to gain from this story? Nothing. Nothing. You know, there's no promises. This story, it might hurt for you to read it. And you need to prepare to read it. So I think that's what I would say. It's okay to care. It's okay to care because we're responsible for every single word that we print in a story. And at the end of the day, we want to know that we were fair, but that we're also transparent. Because when somebody gives you of their time and they share the story, like the death row inmate, no matter who they are, they're giving you a gift. It's the privilege of sharing something often very personal, and I think that we should never forget about that. You know, you'll hear reporters say, my story, I won an award for this story, and somebody congratulated me for that story that I wrote about the suicide, and I said, look, I know what you mean, but please don't congratulate me, because this is not a matter of congratulation. I am glad people are reading the story, but let's keep the big picture and the perspective, that we're not the owners. We are the vessels. We're in a way the vessels, and people actually, many people, they do have voices. It's not that they don't have voices, it's just they're not being heard. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Monica. I come from Cuba. It has been really nice having so many people speaking Spanish around. I kind of miss speaking Spanish. I just read that then in Los Angeles they made the first book fair bilingual, like a bilingual book fair. Also, I have read that very soon, if it's not already that way, Spanish is going to be the second most spoken language in the United States. And I'm saying that just to relate it with the fact that we were very surprised that they shut down the New York Times page in Spanish. Because when you were talking about the advantages of speaking Spanish, I wanted to share that I thought not only about the community you're reaching inside the United States, but also the community you're reaching all along Latin America and Spain. I can talk for Cuba, and we read a lot of American media written in Spanish. So I wonder if you think that despite of what happened with New York Times, is coming a scenario in which more media is going to have Spanish version, or actually having Latin American journalists reading in Spanish from their countries. Thank you.
What happened at the Times was very unfortunate because the New York Times in Espanol was very successful. It had, I believe, 400,000 subscribers to the newsletter, but it was purely a business decision. They started the experiment without thinking about how to make money out of it. And then the experiment got to be really, really good. And it got to grow. They had an amazing team of local, of Spanish-speaking journalists, many of them from Mexico, but the editor was from Argentina, really culturally knowledgeable, really smart. did a lot of original content, but in the end, the business side decided, you know what, it's not making money, we're gonna end it. That, to me, should be a lesson to all the other papers. If you are, there is a hungry market, as you just said, out there, outside of the United States, for news made with the quality of American news, but in Spanish, and thinking of it geared toward a Spanish-speaking audience, right? So I think that the efforts that are starting now, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, Telemundo, being bilingual also means reaching more people, right? I think they all are starting both with the journalism and the business side. How do we make money out of this? That was the mistake the Times made, and then they just pulled the plug right away because they were like, you know, we're growing out of control and we have no money. We have no way that we can figure out how to make money out of it right now. It was too late to make these 400,000 people who subscribe to the newsletter pay.
I will say, I think a smart business manager for whatever media entity knows that being able to provide content to double the audience is a good thing, right? So I don't see, it's really sad and unfortunate what happened in the New York Times in Espanol, but I think that, again, if there are smart managers out there, they're going to recognize and see the value and importance of creating these kinds of opportunities and content moving forward. So I don't see a downward trend. I actually see an upward trend. And as the demographics continue to grow, and as more and more Hispanics are born in this country, I think we'll be seeing more and more of those bilingual opportunities in journalism down the road. Thank you, Monica. Estabas escondida. No te había visto. First of all, thank you so much to our incredible panel for your insight, for your candor, for your advice. I really hope that you're going to walk away tonight really understanding how special, how unique of an opportunity you all have by coming to the school and having access to these kinds of classes and these kinds of programs. So I want to thank you on behalf of the entire panel and myself for joining us this evening. If you have any follow-up questions, we're easy to find, right? We're easy to find. We live here practically. And we encourage you, take a leap of faith. What's the worst that can happen? You know, part of being in college and part of this experience is exploring and trying different things and stepping outside of your comfort zones, because you never know what could happen. You could actually surprise yourself and end up being really good at something that you thought you never could do. So with that, buenas noches, good night. Thank you for joining us. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Yes. Buenas noches.
Good night. Thank you, everybody.